Welcome back to part 2 of a series where we're going to be ranking every hero in each position in Dota. Today we're going to be looking at the second batch of carries. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, or do want an explanation of how we're going to be doing the rankings in this video, go check out part 1 before you watch this. And just a last reminder before we jump into it, this video is going to be looking at heroes as a whole and not just their current power in this patch.
Time to sink or swim.
So let's start off today's video by covering Naga. Naga's strength as a hero really doesn't come online till after the laning stage, but even with considering that, for lane, I'm still going to give her a 2. Some offlaners do have a hard time dealing with her illusions, and if she somehow can find an early lead in lane, she can really snowball that into dominating the rest of the early game. It's just pretty hard for her to get to that stage. Naga has one of the best farming tools in the game, which is why I'm giving her a 5 for farming. Her low cooldown illusions can farm more of the map simultaneously than pretty much any other carry in the game, and when she gets enough farm under her belt, any of her illusions can just single-handedly walk down lane, and there's pretty much no heroes that'll be able to stop any one of them. Because of this map coverage, Naga's going to get a 5 from me and the max impact she can have with farm. Not many carries can take over the game like Naga can. It's pretty realistic to have a game where you can keep 3 of the enemies busy at all times just dealing with illusions. Naga gets a 3 for team utility. Net is a crazy strong lockdown tool, but it isn't hard CC, and Song is also very powerful as a setup tool and a disengage spell, but it also has a hard time dealing with anybody who has BKB up. All in all, she offers a lot compared to most carries, but she really can't do anything against magic immunity, which is her limiting factor here. When playing from behind, I rank Naga at a 1. If you get off to a bad start on this hero, your life is just going to be miserable. You have 0 damage to offer, your illusions are super squishy, and you'll just get hunted based on the nature of your hero. The only real upside that I could see here is if you do get the time to farm just a little bit, your fast farming speed will just rocket you back into the game, but if you don't find that space, your game is pretty much just over. When looking at independence, Naga gets a 2. We're in kind of a weird space here, because for most of the game, I'd rank Naga at a 1, just based on how dependent she is on her team making her some space so that she can get rolling and use that good farming speed to come online. But once you do get a little bit of space, you become extremely self-sufficient with your illusions kind of making the space for you, until you get to a point where you can just completely take over the game and not need your team at all. But I am still going to rank her below average in this category, since you will have to rely on your team pretty much every game to get you to a point where you don't need them. In total, Naga gets an 18 and ends up in the C tier.
I just want to take a quick second to ask that if you are enjoying this video to leave a like. These videos take a lot more time than the other videos I make, so leaving a like helps me know that you are enjoying this content and that I should make more like it. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing so you're notified when part 3 comes out in the coming days.
Nature calls.
Now we're going to be looking at a pretty new face to the carry role. For the vast majority of Dota history, Prophet has never really been a viable carry, but he's finding some good success in recent months. Prophet scores a 3 in lane strength. One of his main appeals as an offlane hero is his high damage between his strong auto attacks and treants, and that definitely is something that still helps him even in the carry position. The thing keeping him from excelling in this category though is the fact that, unlike in the offlane, as a carry you're going to be facing far more aggressive heroes, and a lot of the time, Prophet just can't keep up with that. And you don't have a lot of great tools for escaping or dealing with getting run at. Prophet's farming speed is easily a 5. Between having solid damage, building Maelstrom early a lot of the time, a global ult that can clear a lot of creeps, and his global TP, it's pretty clear that this hero can just collect gold like crazy. Even when you aren't playing carry, this hero will usually end up near the top of the net worth charts, so when you add on top of that your entire team making space for you, you just farm like nuts. I'm going to give Prophet a 4 for max potential with farm. This is a tough one for me because although in straight up fights, I think Prophet will lose the 1v1 to most other carries, even if he does have a bit of a gold lead on them. But the fact that you have a 0 cooldown global teleport later on in the game means that you have so many options at any moment in time that you become one of the most annoying heroes to play against in the entire game. Carry Prophet gets a 3 for utility. Sprout is your only traditional utility, but with the addition of the talent that makes Sprout leash, it makes the spell completely shut down a ton of high mobility heroes. If this talent does eventually get removed, which in my opinion it probably should, I would move him down to a 2 in this category, but until then he's going to stick at a 3. Prophet also offers great tower damage and the ability to connect on any gank. When underfarmed, Prophet's going to get a 2. When you fall behind on carry Prophet, you're likely going to end the game with way too many deaths. This hero relies on farming lane much more than other carries do, and when you do go farm lanes aggressively as an underfarmed carry, you are just going to be a huge target. The only saving grace here is the fact that you can join in on kills anywhere on the map for some extra money, kind of like how Spectre uses Haunt in the early game. For independence, I gave Prophet a 2. Like I said earlier, this hero can still struggle a bit in fights even when ahead. This means you ideally want a good bit of help from your team, keeping you alive and offering good lockdown in fights. Also, without these active teammates to set up kills for you, your ability to connect on these ganks is kind of completely removed. In total, Prophet scores a 21, landing him in the B tier.
The phantom creeps in.
Here's our first popular traditional carry of today's list. In lane, PA hits just above the average and scores a 4. This hero is the middle of the road in a lot of aspects of the laning stage. She has decent offense with Blink Strike and Dagger, has a halfway decent creep securing tool with Dagger again. You have both the passive and active parts of Blur to help you live alongside being able to Blink Strike to teammates, jump away from aggression. Adding all this together, PA isn't really the best carry in any single aspect of the lane, but she holds her own in each one. PA gets a 4 for farming speed. Between Battle Fury, Blink Strike, and Crit, you have a very powerful combo for clearing camps, stacks, and waves. You even have the ability to blur and avoid getting hit by these creeps if you're taking big stacks or ancients early on. I would say she barely falls short of a 5 here, mainly because of her dependence on getting the Battle Fury to be able to farm quickly at all. PA's max impact with farm is a 5. The mix of playing safe and just poking with Dagger, and her full-on aggression that she can have with Blink Striking in, makes PA a very scary carry to play against. And now, with your Shard helping you melt tanky heroes or other heroes that really rely on their passives to live, there aren't many heroes that you can't kill in a single jump. Unfortunately, even late game, PA is extremely susceptible to dying when she doesn't have her BKB up, but since you can easily kill the majority of enemy teams in 6 seconds, it doesn't hold you back all that much. For team utility, PA scores a 1. I would say every item and every ability you have on this hero is really just focused on doing damage rather than supporting your team in any other way. The only slight utility that you do add your team is a little bit of slow and vision that Dagger gives. When playing from behind, PA gets a 4. Your built-in crit really helps you keep up in damage even when you're lacking some bigger damage items. Also, between Blur and a somewhat early BKB can make you pretty survivable even in early game fights when you're behind in farm. Even when you are behind on some items, you can just try to execute supports during your BKB duration during fights and still get out pretty safe. Again, your Shard is an incredible value here and doesn't really rely on you having all that many items, so that can also help you do some damage and get some kills when you're behind. PA is a 4 for independence. If this hero was tankier outside of BKB, I would have no problem giving her a 5, but with that being said, you don't really have to worry about dying when the enemy team dies first, which is kind of what this hero excels at. And this is definitely the last hero that needs help killing enemies. In total, PA gets a 22 and ends up in the A tier.
Our lance is ready.
So this is by far the hardest carry to rank in my eyes. Matchups dictate the score for PL in pretty much every of these categories we have to look at, far more so than anybody else on this list. So starting out, PL is a very volatile laning stage, and because of that, I'm going to give him a 2. More so than most other carries, even the outcome of the lane comes down to the matchup you're in, rather than your execution a lot of the time. Obviously, you can still win hard lanes or lose easy lanes, but it seems to be less in your control. Because of this, it's extremely important not to pick PL into lanes that counter you when possible. Since you and the opposing offlaner will be picking blindly into each other most of the time, I can't really rate this hero super highly in this category. PL has a 3 in farming speed. He starts off farming very slow since illusions don't really have the duration to farm camps or waves on their own, but you often build up to a point where your Manta illusions can get quite a lot done on their own and ramp up your farming speed a ton. For most of the game, you do have to rely on bonus damage and movement speed from Phantom Rush, and your illusions being able to take some of the damage for you. Once again, when we talk about max impact with farm, we have to distinguish PL's score based on the matchup. Overall, I gave him a 4 because when you are very farmed on this hero, you invalidate so much of the Dota roster, but you will have times where you're against some teams that just deal with illusions really well and your game will feel extremely difficult. But just as often, you'll play against teams with no answer to illusions, and you can just take over the entire game without having to be super far ahead. PL gets a 2 for utility. He doesn't have a lot of really big contributions in this department, but you do have access to a slow, being able to fully burn enemy mana pools quickly when you get Diffusal Blade, and the general confusion that your hero causes in fights. Overall, this gives PL the slight edge in this category over some of the other carries that we've looked at. From behind, PL gets a 3. I'm not going to go over the whole speech again about matchups here, but just know that I gave the score because despite the things that could hinder and help PL in this regard, it all really comes down to how well the enemies will deal with illusions. PL gets a 4 in independence. You can easily get to a point where you are tanky enough to survive most initiations, have the ability to stay on or run away from most enemies, have more than enough damage to take down anyone, and create enough confusion to give you the time to do all that in pretty much every fight. In total, PL scores anywhere between a 5 and a 30 realistically, but for the purposes of this list, I'm going to give PL an 18, putting him in the C tier.
I enter the fray.
Razor's another case of a fairly uncommon carry hero in terms of Dota history, but right now it's picking up some steam. Carry Razor has a pretty strong lane presence, netting him a 4 in this category. Static Link puts Razor in a position where he can have such a large damage discrepancy from the enemy that he can secure pretty much every last hit and any deny in the following wave. This spell also obviously serves as a great offensive tool and a defensive option to decrease the damage output of anybody who jumps you. Razor gets a 1 in farm speed. Compared to other carries, it really just doesn't get much worse than this. I guess you have high movement speed to get to creeps faster, but once you get there, your only tool to actually clear the creeps is Plasma Field, which isn't great, or committing your ult if you really want to do that. And even if you do decide to commit your ult to help you farm creeps, it still doesn't put you on par with the higher tier carries. For max impact with farm, I gave Razor a 2. Razor is a hero that really suffers by only having single target damage later into the game, and although some heroes with this limitation can find success, like PA or Slark, you really don't have the same damage output as these other single target cores. You still really rely on building damage over time with static link, making your damage output far less reliable than most other carries. With all that being said, if you can manage to link the enemy carry and stick on them, you'll have a massive damage advantage, but again, that's not something you can expect to have happen reliably. Razor earns a 3 for utility. He has good movement speed, solid tower pushing, an AoE vision tool, and the ability to completely remove some heroes from fights by draining all their damage. I think this is another one of those carries that really excels as kind of being the center point of the team, but really struggles to do much on their own. From behind, Razor's going to score a 2. This hero really needs items to keep up in the damage department with other carries. The only tool that you have here is static link, making up for some of your damage you might be missing, but with how unreliable this spell can be from fight to fight, and the fact that it takes some time, which you might not be fortunate enough to have in every fight, it really does hinder Razor here. Razor scores a 2 for independence. Again, I think carry Razor excels at being the center of your team and struggles when you have to do too much alone. This makes Razor a great carry when you know you're going to have a team to play with, but since pubs makes that a complete uncertainty every time you search for a game, Razor is going to score pretty low here overall. In total, Razor scores a 15 and ends up in the D tier.
At your service.
I think this is by far the most gimmicky carry we're going to see here. In lane, I'm going to give Riki a 2. He is alright offensively in lane as far as damage and mobility goes, but if you're not laning with an offensive support, or the opposing lane has a lot more pressure than you guys do, your lane is going to be in a lot of trouble. Tricks of the Trade and Blink Strike can get you out of harm's way sometimes, but there's going to be a lot of lanes where you just can't come up to the wave without losing the majority of your HP each time. And with the backstab bonus damage being tied to your ult now, you don't have that bonus in lane to help you with last hitting or denying. For farm speed, Riki gets a 1. In a lot of ways, Riki's kit seems almost comedically designed to be bad at farming. Smoke Cloud and Tricks of the Trade do literally nothing for you here. Your invis might help you get to different parts of the map safer, but once you're there, you still don't have any ability to farm the creeps quick. Backstab is really what helps you do damage, but besides your initial hit, neutral creeps will always be facing you. In patches where Riki builds Battle Fury, I would be inclined to give him an extra point or 2 here, because I think he is far more of a farming threat with that item, but without it, he's just kind of hopeless when it comes to farming. Riki's max impact is going to come out as a 3. You are the definition of a glass cannon here. You can have some incredibly high bursts that can take out entire enemy teams, while at the same time being completely susceptible to getting solo killed by half the people in the game. I can't realistically give a hero that's so hit or miss above a 3 in this category. Riki does have some decent utility, netting him another 3. Smoke Cloud is an amazing spell, even allowing Riki to be played as position 4 in some patches purely based on how strong this spell can be at times. Past this, you don't have a whole lot, but the short cooldown, ranged AoE silence can completely shut down some heroes. An underfarmed Riki is going to score a 2. This hero can do some crazy amounts of damage, even when underfarmed. You don't need a ton to hit like a truck, but as a carry, being able to burst one hero down isn't going to be enough on its own to make up for how squishy you are. Riki is a carry that gets shut down completely by support items, more so than any other carry. A Force Staff, Ghost Scepter, or Yules can make it feel impossible to kill enemy heroes, and when you do fall behind, all you do is increase your time to kill, making it easier for enemies to save each other or react with these defensive support items. For independence, Riki gets a 3. You are the ultimate ganking carry without a doubt, but that does come at the cost of your teamfight ability. If you could win the game purely off kills alone, this hero would be very highly rated, but since you can't, you really have to rely on your team here to do a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to fights and objective taking. In total, Riki ends up with a 14, which is the lowest score we've had for any carry so far, landing him in the D tier.
It's never dark enough.
Slark has really fallen out of favor as a pub carry in the last year, and although this patch he may not be the best, he is severely underrated in terms of pub carrying. In lane, I'm going to give him a 3. Dark Pact is a great defensive tool, and against certain heroes can completely shut down their offense, and it still does solid damage too. Pounce is good for jumping in or out, and Essence Shift makes it extremely hard for many melee offlaners to trade with Slark effectively. But he has a really hard time securing creeps, and his susceptibility to pressure from opposing ranged heroes does limit him here. Slark does have a few good farming tools, but still falls just short of the top tier farmers, landing him at a 3. Dark Pact and Pounce help Slark move around and clear camps at decent speeds, at the cost of a lot of HP and mana, but with his ult making the HP loss negligible and tread swapping plus Echo Saber keeping his mana at a decent spot, he does a pretty good job at flash farming, but his low right click damage is his real limiting factor here, keeping him from going any higher. Slark gets a 4 for max impact with farm. His defensive nature alone makes him incredibly hard to deal with, but adding in Essence Shift and his high mobility makes it easy for Slark to just plow through enemy teams, only getting stronger as the fight drags on. His max damage damage is going to be capped lower than some of the other carries, but in every other aspect he thrives. This may be a bit surprising to some people at first, but I'm going to give Slark a 5 in utility. He has a good leash, his shard can pretty much make a group of teammates immune to certain damages. His ability to survive in fights with Dark Pact and Shadow Dance make him survivable enough to not need teammates to save him, meaning they can position safer and use abilities more offensively, but all of that pales in comparison to the strength of the passive part of Shadow Dance, making you the best dewarding hero in the entire game. If you're playing this hero and not walking around with a few sentry wards, you're doing something very wrong. In higher MMR games, where you can get away with just picking out where the wards are and having your teammates consistently deward them, that's great, but if you don't have that blind faith in your teammates, just do it yourself, plus it'll always make you some extra money on the way. From behind, Slark gets a 2. He is very survivable, even without items, but since this hero is so centered around your ability to solo kill heroes, when you're too weak to do that, you lose much of what makes Slark strong. Slark is a 4 in independence. You can play almost anywhere on the map safely, kill almost any hero, and single-handedly remove the majority of the enemy team's vision. The only things holding you back here are your lackluster tower damage, and the fact that if you're not super far ahead, you really do need some extra CC in fights to help you get kills. In total, Slark ends up with a 20, putting him in the B tier.
Spectre.
Now we're on to Spectre, who has been the queen of pub carries for as long as I can remember. For the vast majority of Dota history, Spectre has been the highest win rate carry in the game. I gave Spectre a 3 in laning. Out of the super late game carries, Spectre probably has the best laning stage. This does depend on you having a pretty strong support, either something with a lot of pressure like an Ogre or Dawnbreaker, or something very defensive like a Warlock. If you are in one of these lanes, it's pretty unlikely that you'll get bullied out of lane ever. You also have Dispersion and Spectral Dagger to do a good job of keeping you safe. Offensively, you don't have a ton to offer, but your real goal here is just to get as much money as you can until you go off to the jungle. In farming speed, Spectre gets a 4. Dispersion helps Spectre stay healthy and adds a little bit of AoE damage while jungling. Desolate helps clear final creeps quickly, and Spectral Dagger also adds some damage while helping you move around the map a little bit faster. All of these things individually are actually pretty underwhelming, but the fact that Haunt, although not letting you directly hit creeps faster, allows you to farm freely, even late into the game, makes the amount of creeps you have access to throughout the game higher than any other hero. No shock here, Spectre's going to score a 5 in the max impact with the farm category. You have Dispersion for tankiness, Desolate for huge damage, and Haunt to teleport to any enemy that you could possibly want. All this adds up to make this hero one of the biggest late game threats in the entire game. And with your Ags giving you access to a short cooldown single target Haunt, she only has gotten stronger through the years. Spectre scores a 4 in utility. Again, this is more of a roundabout result rather than the direct utility we see from most heroes. Haunt and your Ags allowing you to connect on kills globally is an incredible thing to add to a team. You enable so many aggressive heroes to find kills that they normally would be missing a slight amount of damage to actually find. Haunt also gives you vision of every enemy here in the game while also canceling blink daggers, and Spectral Dagger is also somewhat of a useful vision and slow tool. When playing from behind, Spectre is going to score a 4. Normally, when you're behind in a carry, you kind of have to sacrifice a ton of farming time to stay with your team to ensure you always have 5 people whenever possible. But once again, Haunt allows you to participate without giving up this farming time at all. You also have free access to jumping any hero you want in fight. In case you don't want to jump the front lines, you can still jump the back lines and be pretty safe. And then also having access to join in on kills with Shadow Step, allowing you to get kill or assist gold while having no downtime in farming. In our final section for today, Spectre is going to score a 4 in independence. The reason this score is so high is because of how overwhelming this hero is when it gets farmed. Once you reach critical mass on Spectre, the game becomes yours to lose pretty much. But if your team is very inactive, Haunt suddenly becomes far less useful and will just kind of collect dust. All in all, as soon as you get your start and get rolling on this hero, you're pretty much set. Spectre ends up just falling short of S tier with 24 points, landing here at the very top of A.
On screen now is the final results for today's rankings. If you want to check out the chart with all the rankings for each individual category, check out that in my Discord, which is linked below. Leave all your thoughts and opinions for this video and each of the rankings in the comments. If you want to watch part 1, ranking the first set of carries, click that prompt which is on screen now. That's all I got.